Hello and welcome, my dear friend. Have you ever noticed that some prayers seem to be answered effortlessly, while others feel like they drift into the air, never to return? We ask, we seek, we wait, sometimes receiving a sign so clear it feels undeniable, and other times only silence. The truth is, this silence isn't absence. It's an invitation. We often think of prayer as a request system, where we send our words upward and expect results in return. But what if prayer was never meant to be transactional? What if it was meant to be relational, a space where we commune, listen, and experience rather than just ask and wait? So many have spent their lives praying to God, yet few have ever truly spoken with Him. There's a difference, one that shifts everything. When we pray to God, it may feel as though we're sending letters into the void, hoping for a response. But when we talk with God, the conversation changes. It's no longer about waiting, it's about being present. It's about sitting in the stillness, listening, responding, experiencing. God doesn't just listen, He speaks, but not in the way most expect. It's not always a voice booming from the heavens or a dramatic sign that shakes the ground beneath our feet. Sometimes His words arrive in a knowing, a sudden clarity, a whisper in our hearts so gentle we almost miss it. And if we're too focused on talking at Him, we may never realize He's been speaking all along. Think about the conversations we have with the people closest to us. The most meaningful discussions are not ones where we simply list our demands or talk endlessly without pause. True connection happens in the spaces between words, in the moments where silence is filled with understanding, where presence is enough, where listening holds more weight than speaking. Imagine sitting across from someone who has guided us, protected us, loved us through every storm. Would we spend the entire time listing off our needs? Would we pour out request after request and then walk away before they even had the chance to speak? Of course not. We'd listen, we'd engage, we'd allow the space for a real exchange. And yet, when it comes to God, how often do we approach Him like a vending machine, pressing buttons, making demands, expecting instant results? We sometimes treat prayer as a formula. If we say the right words, at the right time, in the right way, then surely God will answer. But true communication with the divine isn't about formulas or techniques. It's about trust. It's about recognizing that God's presence is not something we must earn. It is something that has always been. But what if the most powerful prayers weren't spoken at all? What if they were received? When was the last time we asked God a question and then actually sat in the quiet to hear the answer? When was the last time we truly expected Him to respond? Not with a miracle on demand, but with wisdom, insight, or peace. Many feel distant from Him, not because He is far away, but because we've never stopped talking long enough to hear Him reply. The world teaches us to be busy. It glorifies noise, action, movement. We are told that productivity is king, that the more we do, the more we are worth. But the divine doesn't shout over the chaos. He speaks in the spaces between it. If we've been feeling unheard, if our prayers seem unanswered, it may not be because God isn't responding. It may be because He's been speaking all along, and we just haven't slowed down enough to listen. The greatest revelations don't come through force. They come through stillness. They don't arrive when we're desperate for control, but when we surrender enough to receive. Think of it like standing in a river. When we thrash, fight, and demand the water bend to our will, we create waves, ripples, distortion. The reflection is lost. But the moment we become still, the surface clears. The reflection sharpens. The water reveals what's been there all along. God's wisdom flows the same way. If we're caught in the habit of constantly asking and never being, we may be disrupting the very clarity we seek. So, what would happen if instead of filling the silence with words, we stepped into it and simply said, "I'm here, I'm listening"? What if we embraced the stillness instead of resisting it? What if we saw silence as sacred rather than unsettling? What if we truly believed that in the quiet, we are never alone? Try it. Not just once, not just for a few minutes, but as a way of life. The next time we pray, let's not rush to list our needs. Instead, let's ask and then wait. Not with impatience, not with expectation for some grand response, but with openness. God speaks in the pauses, in the spaces between our thoughts, in the quiet moments when we finally allow ourselves to be still and know. And if we've ever wondered if He's truly listening, consider this. Maybe He's been wondering the same about us. When we talk with God instead of to Him, the dialogue shifts. We stop begging for signs and start recognizing the ones that have already appeared. We stop assuming silence means absence and begin to understand that in that very silence, He is teaching us how to hear in ways beyond words. Too often, we wait for an external sign, not realizing that the most profound revelations often emerge from within. A feeling of peace where there was once anxiety. A sudden understanding that shifts our entire perspective. A moment where everything clicks, not because circumstances changed, but because we did. There is a reason the greatest wisdom often comes not in the moment of asking, but in the stillness that follows. It's in those quiet, unguarded moments, when our minds finally soften, when the walls of our expectations crumble, that His voice becomes clear. Because God does not compete with distractions, He will not shout over assumptions. But if we listen, truly listen, we'll realize He has been speaking all along. Consider this. When a child speaks to their parent, the parent doesn't always answer in words. Sometimes the response is in a knowing look, a guiding hand, an action taken long before the child even realizes they needed help. And yet, how often do we demand that God explain Himself instead of trusting that He already has? We live in a world that has conditioned us to expect immediate results. We've grown so accustomed to quick gratification that we unknowingly apply the same expectations to God. But divine timing doesn't operate on human schedules. What feels like silence is often divine precision. Things aligning behind the scenes in ways we cannot yet comprehend. If we knew, without question, that God was with us, that He saw us, that He had already set things in motion for our highest good, how differently would we approach our time with Him? Would we still feel the need to beg, to prove, to convince Him to listen? Or would we settle into the certainty that His presence is not something we must earn, but something that has always been? It's time to stop treating prayer like a transaction and start embracing it as a relationship. A living, breathing exchange where words are only part of the conversation, where silence isn't a void, but a sacred space filled with answers beyond language. Have you ever noticed that sitting beside someone we love with no need for words can be more powerful than 1,000 conversations? That feeling, that depth of understanding without speaking, that is what talking with God feels like. And that means surrender. Surrendering isn't about giving up. It's about releasing the need to control. It's about trusting that just because we don't see the answer yet doesn't mean it isn't already unfolding. It's about recognizing that our prayers are never ignored. They are simply answered in the ways that serve our highest good, even if we don't immediately understand how. So instead of asking, "Why isn't God answering me?" perhaps the better question is, am I allowing myself to receive the answer? Because sometimes the reason we don't hear God isn't because He isn't speaking. It's because we're too focused on our own expectations to notice the way He's choosing to respond. Maybe He isn't answering in the way we envisioned, but through an unexpected opportunity. Maybe He isn't giving us the sign we asked for, but a moment of deep peace. Maybe He isn't removing the obstacle, but instead strengthening us to overcome it. God's wisdom is infinite, and often what we think we need is not what will truly serve us. So today, if we find ourselves reaching for Him, let's take a breath. Instead of filling the space with requests, let's simply be with Him, not as seekers looking for proof, but as those who already know, deep down, that we are heard, seen, and deeply loved. God is not distant. He is not ignoring us. He is not withholding His voice. He is waiting, patiently, lovingly, for us to meet Him in the silence. Because in that silence, we will find something far greater than answers. We will find peace. We will find certainty. And most of all, we will find Him. Thank you so much for taking this journey with me. If you found value in this message, please like the video and share it with others who might benefit. Don't forget to subscribe and continue your amazing journey by watching one of the videos showing on your screen that resonates with you the most. See you there.